コールドスリープ開始。
Dude, I'm pretty sure that's not how cold sleep works. Not unless you're Squidward, and even then, that didn't exactly work out all that great. We open this one with an explorer stumbling upon some pure nightmare fuel. Fun fact about me, I could never beat Super Mario Bros. 2 because I was terrified of those mass things. Ugh, still kind of am. But yeah, this palace in the snow was in Zamular, Hakua's home country, and the place where the White Sword Brave was. Though of course, all of this wasn't news to the ice vendor, who clearly was hiding a few things from his friends. Sewell had picked up on this, and even offered to take him there, but Hakua adamantly refused at first. And the reason for this was apparently because the palace was haunted, which was something that the Sword Eyes also ended up learning about from the explorer named Rebel, who, yeah, real solid name there, dude. However, Sewell did eventually manage to convince him to go.
秘密?
Okay, now y'all are making the FMA jokes way too easy. Actually, he was just showing him his human soul, which he offered to give to Hakua if anything should happen to him, and obviously the simple ice vendor didn't want a freaking soul, but he likely felt guilty that he had forced Sewell to pull such a desperate move, so he decided to cooperate. However, once they rendezvoused with the rest of the heroes, he was still hesitant about entering the palace, which, fair enough, again, that phantom mask kind of freaks me out. Rebel, though, managed to egg him into helping them, especially after he made the not-so-surprising revelation that Hakua was the White Sword Eye, having hidden his glowaway eye with some special glasses. As a result, he ended up unlocking the castle that originally belonged to the previous bearer of the White Eye of Light. Now you see, this is what happens when you let Hayao Miyazaki design your fortresses. Seriously, ever notice how he always insists on those giant teardrops? Understandably, the reason he hid his eye was to avoid the same prejudice that had befallen the other eye bearers. For Hakua, he just wanted to avoid any sort of major conflict in his life. However, when Disney calls, you kind of have to pick up that phone, as even the old droids that had served Hakua's predecessor, the White Knight Vargas, very creepily insisted.
私は羊戦士セルジャー。ご主人様のお名前をお教え。
Now, can we get your social security and credit card number too? Holy crap, this dude is an even bigger scam artist than me. Surger here was very insistent that Hakua take up the sword, even defrosting it by pouring some magical boiling water on it, which I'm pretty sure is just going to damage it with the sudden temperature change, just saying. However...
最初からこいつを狙ってたのさ。
Curse your sudden but inevitable betrayal!
The Sword Brave had been taken by, again, the guy named Rebel, so Surger decided to detain Hakua until they could get it back. But to the droid's credit, he did have good reasons for wanting to keep it around that we would see through a card game with Tsurugi, because we can't forget what the show is trying to sell. Granted, like Bringer, he was using some very outdated cards by this point. Specifically, it was implied that he was using a recreation of Vargas's deck, who in turn was using a copy of Yuki Momose's deck from Battle Spirit Shonen Gekiha Dawn, who was pretty much the main rival of the season to the previously mentioned Don Bashin. Thus his cards were another case of strong for their time, but weak now, though in recent years they did get erratas that did make them at least viable. Regardless, Tsurugi was never going to lose this fight, so instead, the droid just focused on expositing some good lore. This included how Vargas and his brother were born poor and on the streets, but rose to power thanks to their efforts, and a little help from his glowy eye. Also, the droid didn't really mention the brother, but we the audience could clearly see him, and the fact that he looked just a little familiar.
Could I get any heavier foreshadowing?
But yeah, they established that Vargas was a strong, self-made man who sought to bring all the people together by bringing their nation's leaders together. However, his ideals would never come to fruition, as for whatever reason, no other Sword Eyes were incarnated, or at least didn't join his cause. As a result, the other nation's leaders singled him out, believing that a Sword Eye would give him a superior political authority, and destroyed his kingdom. As a result, Vargas grew to resent the Sword Eyes, and the god who had cursed him with his eye that had given him so much fortune, only to take it all away in the end. So, yeah, I just wanted to take a quick minute to remind everyone, including myself, that this is indeed a kid's show, right? Like, obviously, this is a highly condensed little bit of social political fantasy, but for something that's being told over the course of a card game, it's pretty rich in some interesting lore and world building. Helps that it also has some good theming to it.
力を持つ者の義務、乱れた世に苦しむ人々を救わなければならない。
This is pretty much a counter-argument to the more pragmatic ideals of Hakua and the Atlantean citizens. That being that, while sometimes it is just best to leave things be, as we've seen in both this and the previous episode, inaction has led to the fall of nations, as if one party gains too much power over another, then things will inevitably start to break down. Moreover, if a person has the power to make those necessary changes, then don't they have a duty to make a difference if needed? You know, it's like that old saying, when you take on the responsibility, great power will come. Wait, what is this grammatically nonsensical crap? Anyway, the point is that both sides have a point, and that there is a middle ground that they should try to find. And considering how much control Atlantia sees, maybe it is time to make at least some changes. Oh, and also during all of this, they were having a pretty good card game. Again, while Surtur really didn't stand that much of a chance, he did provide a decent challenge for Tsurugi, especially once he brought out his ace, Valhallens, which had the ability to bounce all weaker spirits back to the opponent's hand. However, Tsurugi just as easily replaced those units with his new dragon, while he still had his original Shining Dragon on the field, leading to an awesome animation where the Sword Brave was transferred to it by them just throwing the sharp blade between each other because dragons always have to do something awesome. No, and we also got this little exchange with Valhallens. Yeah, can you tell this was made by the same company that does Gundam? Well, actually, you probably will next time at least. Anyway, Tsurugi won one of the most needlessly awesome jobber fights ever, and freed Hakua. With that, the episode and the old droid ended his job by saying that he'd allow Hakua to decide his own destiny, finally allowing himself and his brethren to pass on. This is a good example of how a card game format can actually act as a good basis for storytelling. Through it, they managed to balance both a very story-rich yet action-packed episode all into one without feeling too disjointed. It also kind of helps that this is the kind of fantasy that I'm personally really into, with a ton of backstabbing and some foul play that really helps to challenge the protagonist's morals. Exposition, just by its very nature, can be a little boring, even if it is well written. It's best not to just let characters endlessly prattle on for most of an episode's runtime. Thus, it was pretty smart for this show to break it up with a card game that also let the storyteller reflect on his nostalgic feelings for his old master, with appropriately old cards in the actual TCG at the time. It made Surtur, essentially kidnapping a little boy, a little more palatable, as there was a sense that he was running out of time to fulfill Vargas's last will and testament. Said will acted as a good counterpoint to the more cynical views that we were getting from characters like Hakua and the citizens of Atlantia. Yes, starting up an uprising against Yaiba shouldn't be taken lightly like the Sword Eyes kind of were, but not doing anything also led to Vargas's kingdom being snuffed out because no one joined his side. It's all about finding that middle ground and figuring out what needs to be changed in order to lead to the best outcome for everyone. And while ideas like destiny should never be absolute, if you do have the ability to make a difference, then maybe you should consider seeing it through, which Hakua is going to go through in the next couple of episodes that convert him from, admittedly, a reasonable cynic to at least a proactive cynic. Meanwhile, it is just nice to see Tsurugi learning from those more experienced than him and absorbing it in order to expand his viewpoints. It's good stuff that shows both his growth as a character and card battler. Granted, a lot of that work was also being handled by the animators who just went all out on what was essentially a nostalgic battle for previous seasons of this franchise. And overall, this is another very good episode that expanded the lore, built up the characters, and foreshadowed some future developments. While he was a bit of an old clunker, Surtur had some interesting stories to tell, which will lead to some more to be told. Thanks for watching, and maybe consider checking out our reviews for a new series coming up that's going to have the same head writer as this show. While it is hard to tell whether or not this show will have as much in-depth world building as Battle Spirits, I do think that Boom Booger will at least be a fun change of pace for this channel. Look forward to it. Until then though, for now my friends, and what the hell is going on over there? I'm going to be staying indoors for the next few weeks.